The deep space station on Titan had never been this quiet. Usually the room buzzed with voices, soft beeps of scanners, and the gentle hum of data relays. But now, everything had gone still. Only one sound filled the air, a broken transmission repeating through static. Lieutenant Mara Vance leaned closer to the console, her fingers trembling slightly. "Run it again," she whispered. The engineer hesitated, but obeyed. The same signal came through, cracked and filled with white noise. Behind the distortion, a human voice screamed something short, desperate. Then came one clear word that cut through the static like a blade. Genocide. The room froze. The word felt heavy, almost unreal. For a few seconds, no one moved. Screens flickered, displaying fragments of coordinates. Kepler 9, a distant human colony world. Then the signal went dead completely. No heartbeat beacon, no distress line. Just silence. Mara turned to the communications chief, her face pale. "Any backup channels?" she asked. He shook his head slowly. "All gone. Every relay in that sector went offline, one by one." They all knew what that meant. A colony of 3 billion people had just vanished. The data was sent to Earth immediately through secure quantum channels. Within hours, the message reached the United Terran Council in Geneva, the central voice of humanity's new era of peace. Inside a massive glass-walled chamber, delegates and admirals gathered under the flickering light of emergency holoscreens. No one spoke at first. The data played once more for all to hear. The static, the screams. That single word. President Aidan Ross sat motionless. His eyes stayed fixed on the holomap, showing a black void where the Kepler system used to shine. "Is there any chance this was an accident?" he asked quietly. Admiral Elara Vale, head of the Terran Defense Fleet, shook her head. "No, sir. This was deliberate. We've checked long-range signatures. Weapon traces match plasma bombardment patterns. Someone targeted that world." A murmur spread through the chamber. The peace they had built for 50 years suddenly felt like glass, one hit away from shattering. "Who would dare?" another counselor demanded. Vale hesitated. "Preliminary scans detected ship debris near the system. Alloy composition matches the Vorg Dominion. They're the only ones using that grade of plasma filament." The room erupted in disbelief. The Vorg Dominion, one of the oldest alien alliances, had been humanity's uneasy partner since the Galactic Peace Charter. They'd signed treaties, traded technology, even shared embassies. But deep down, everyone knew the Dominion saw humans as upstarts, clever, dangerous, and growing too fast. "Maybe it's a rogue fleet," someone offered. The Dominion would never risk a war. But Vale's voice cut through the noise. 3 billion civilians burned to ash is not a rogue act. This was organized, planned. A heavy silence followed. The word genocide no longer sounded like a distant echo. It was real, sitting in the room with them. Hours turned into days as fleets searched for survivors. They found nothing, only burned cities and floating shards of glass. From orbit, Kepler 9 looked like a cracked mirror reflecting the light of its dying sun. Drones recovered fragments of black box recordings from colony ships. The last image showed alien vessels opening fire on evacuation transports. No mercy, no warning. When the footage reached Earth, it played across every screen. People stopped working. Streets went quiet. Parents pulled their children close. Humanity had known tragedy before, but this felt different. Colder, crueler. The galaxy had crossed a line. Admiral Vale stood alone on the observation deck above the Pacific Command Tower. From there, she could see the night lights of Earth's cities flickering beneath the clouds. It looked peaceful, but she could feel something changing in the air, a low, quiet fury rising from billions of hearts. Her aide approached carefully. "Ma'am, the Council's waiting for your assessment." Vale didn't turn. "Tell them I've seen the data," she said softly, "and tell them I know what it means." She remembered the early days of the Galactic Charter, the optimism, the belief that humanity could coexist among the stars. That hope had shaped her entire career. But now, as she stared into the endless dark of space, she felt that hope bleeding away. Later that night, the emergency session began. Every nation, every faction, every leader was there, connected through hololinks from orbiting stations to underground shelters. The president began with calm words, but they sounded hollow. "We have sought peace for generations," he said. "We believed the galaxy had changed. But now he paused. His voice trembled. "Now they have killed our people. Entire families, entire cities. They believed we would stay silent. That we would remain civilized." Murmurs rose, anger spreading through the hall like fire. Then Admiral Vale stood. Her uniform caught the light, and her expression was sharp as steel. "If we do nothing," she said, "we invite them to finish what they started. The galaxy thinks humanity has forgotten how to fight. Maybe it's time they remember." The room fell quiet. Her words hung in the air like the sound before a storm. After that night, every corner of Earth buzzed with one question: what happens next? Factories that once built colony transports began reactivating their old defense lines. Soldiers who had retired decades ago volunteered for service again. Young people filled the academies overnight. Something ancient was waking. Not rage, but resolve. Mara Vance watched the news from Titan Station, still haunted by the scream she had heard days ago. She whispered the word again under her breath. Genocide. It no longer sounded like fear. It sounded like a promise, somewhere deep beneath the Pacific. The Terran Defense Fleet prepared for launch. The stars would soon learn the same truth written into every human story since the dawn of time. When Earth rises, it does not rise quietly. The Terran Fleet reached the Kepler sector 10 days after the last signal died. The space around the system was unnaturally quiet, as if the stars themselves were holding their breath. Dust and debris floated where trade routes once shimmered with traffic. Every ship's sensor flickered with radiation from the bombardment. Admiral Elara Vale stood at the bridge window of the TDS Vanguard, humanity's flagship. Her eyes were fixed on the planet below, Kepler 9, the colony once called Haven Terra. Now it was only ash. Entire continents were blackened, oceans boiled, and the atmosphere still burned faintly red, like a dying ember refusing to fade. "Surface scans complete," said Commander Holt, his voice flat. "No life signs. No power signatures. Radiation pockets across 92% of the crust. Cities erased. It's all gone, ma'am." Vale nodded slowly. "Send in the drones. I want every piece of evidence we can find." Tiny silver drones scattered from the ship like sparks, diving through the glowing clouds. Hours passed as they recorded twisted metal, melted streets, and the ruins of human architecture. Where once were gardens and schools, only shadows of foundations remained. Then one drone found something unexpected, a crater filled with half-buried machines. They weren't human. Their hulls were curved, almost organic, and marked with symbols no one on the bridge needed to translate. Everyone recognized that cold spiral emblem, the mark of the Vorg Dominion. The silence on the bridge deepened. "They didn't even hide it," Holt said quietly. Vale's jaw tightened. "They wanted us to know." Another feed came in, a black box recorder from a downed colony shuttle. The data was damaged, but the audio survived. They heard the last transmissions of the colony defense force, terrified voices calling out, "Shields failing! Incoming orbital fire! Civilians still in shelters." Then came the sound of plasma impacts and screaming. Finally, a child's voice whispered, They said humans must learn their place." The recording ended in static. No one spoke for a long time. Even the hum of the ship felt too loud. Vale turned away from the display and walked toward the observation deck. Below her, the planet rotated slowly, covered in glowing scars. "Admiral," said Holt, following her, "we should return the data to Earth immediately." She nodded. "We will, but not yet. There's something I need to see with my own eyes." The Vanguard descended through the clouds. Lightning crackled through red dust storms, revealing the skeletons of skyscrapers and transport rails that looked like burned bones. The city once called New Lion lay beneath a mountain of glass and frozen mid-meltdown. Vale stepped onto the surface in a pressurized suit. The ground crunched under her boots. She knelt and picked up a fragment of metal. Part of a children's playground slide melted at the edges. Her reflection in it was warped, ghost-like. This wasn't war, she said through the comms. This was erasure. When they returned to orbit, Vale recorded a secure transmission for the Terran Council. Her face was lit only by the glow of the ruined world behind her. Kepler 9 is lost, she said. Evidence confirms coordinated strikes by Vorg Dominion fleets. Civilian populations targeted intentionally. No survivors. The Dominion has violated the Galactic Charter in full. She paused, her voice steady but low. We believed they saw us as equals. We were wrong. They see us as a mistake to be corrected. The message reached Earth within hours. Across the planet, news networks played the footage of the burning colony. People wept openly. Some called for peace, still clinging to hope. But most remained silent. That kind of silence that came before storms. In the capital, President Ross met with the council again. The room was tense, air thick with anger. Holographic images of Kepler 9 hung around them, spinning slowly like ghosts. We must demand an investigation, said one delegate. We can't assume this was sanctioned by the Dominion leadership. Admiral Vale's hologram appeared beside them. You don't glass a planet by accident, she said firmly. And you don't erase 3 billion people to send a message unless that message is war. A young diplomat stood. If we retaliate, we risk total galactic conflict. We could lose everything we've built. Vale's eyes narrowed. We already lost everything they burned. The president looked from one face to another. Are we sure we can win such a war? Vale didn't flinch. Sir, this isn't about winning. It's about surviving with dignity. Outside, protests erupted worldwide. People filled the streets carrying banners that read, "Never again and no more mercy." Soldiers who had retired long ago began sending messages to recruitment offices. The old flags of Earth's nations appeared again, not divided, but woven together under a single emblem, the Terran Union. Meanwhile, far from Earth in the core worlds of the Dominion, alien leaders watched the human broadcast with disdain. One of them, Grand Regent Thal Rin, laughed in his council chamber. Let them scream, he said to his advisors. They will do nothing. They are children playing Empire. The humans forget their place, but even as he spoke, Dominion listening stations began detecting faint signals from the Sol system. Energy spikes, mass production outputs rising, and encrypted fleet transmissions marked classified. Something vast was awakening behind the blue planet. Back on the Vanguard, Admiral Vale stood in front of the viewing deck, hands clasped behind her back. Prepare the fleet for return, she ordered. And compile every image, every log, every name of the dead. Earth must see what they did. When the stars bent around the ship as it entered FTL, she whispered to herself, They wanted to teach us fear. Instead, they've reminded us who we are. The transmission from Kepler 9 spread across the galaxy. Worlds that once ignored humanity now watched in silence. Some pitied them. Others feared them. Because deep down, every species knew what history had shown 1,000 times before. Humans might forgive, but they never forget. The great council chamber of Earth had not been this full in 100 years. Holographic screens floated above a circular table, showing the faces of leaders from every colony, moon, and station across the Sol system. The lights were dim, and every person inside carried the same heavy expression. They had all seen the footage from Kepler 9, the broken cities, the burned faces, the silence that followed. President Aiden Ross stood at the center of the chamber. His voice, calm but strained, echoed through the room. You have all seen the evidence. The Vorg Dominion carried out a deliberate extermination of a Terran colony. They broke every law of peace we ever signed. The question before us now is simple. What do we do? No one answered at first. The silence was louder than any noise. Then a delegate from the Lunar Assembly spoke. We must bring them to justice through the Galactic Council. File a formal charge. The Dominion cannot escape diplomatic pressure forever. Several heads nodded, desperate to cling to the idea of peace. But Admiral Elara Vale stood slowly, her face half lit by the hologram of Kepler 9's burning surface. Justice? She said quietly. You think they fear our words? Her tone was calm, but each word carried the weight of thunder. The Dominion didn't make a mistake. They didn't send us a warning. They sent us a message that humanity's age is over. Admiral, with respect. Another representative interrupted. If we retaliate, it could bring the entire galaxy against us. Billions could die. Vale turned to him, eyes cold and clear. Billions already did. The chamber went silent again. Even the hum of the projectors felt distant. A frail old scientist from Mars rose next. We are not like them. If we answer blood with blood, we become monsters too. Vale stepped closer to the center. Monsters, she said. They slaughtered children. They burned hospitals. They called us animals. And you want to debate ethics while their fleets prepare for another strike? Her voice cracked slightly on the last word, not from weakness but from exhaustion. The exhaustion of someone who had carried too many graves inside her heart. The president sighed. You were there, Admiral. You saw the ruins. Tell us plainly. What do you believe we must do? Vale looked around the vast chamber. Every hologram of every leader flickered, faces of men and women waiting for an answer that would change history. She spoke softly, but the entire room seemed to hold its breath. We stop playing civilized, she said. We show them what happens when humanity stops holding back. The words spread like electricity through the chamber. Some gasped. Others whispered. A few nodded with grim acceptance. The president turned to the council clerk. Begin the vote, he ordered. Names and numbers flashed across the screens. Blue for diplomacy, red for retaliation. As the count began, tension filled the air like storm clouds. Every second felt endless. Finally, the result appeared. Retaliation. Passed. The chamber erupted in noise, shouts, fear, applause, and anger all at once. But Admiral Vale stood perfectly still. She felt neither joy nor relief, only resolve. After the session, she walked out onto the balcony overlooking Geneva's shining towers. The city glowed peacefully beneath the night sky, unaware that its people had just declared the beginning of something that could end everything. Her aide approached quietly. It's done, he said. Vale didn't look away from the horizon. Then the galaxy has just changed forever. The next morning, the news broke across every human world. Terran Council authorizes Operation Retribution. Crowds filled the streets, some cheering, some praying. Factories that once built colony ships were ordered to produce war machines. Orbital shipyards flickered to life after decades of peace. In the training fields of Mars, soldiers drilled under the burning sun. On Luna, engineers worked without rest, reforging old warships into something new. Faster, harder, unstoppable. Humanity was awakening its war machine. Still, not everyone agreed. In small corners of Earth, protesters marched, holding banners that read, "Peace before vengeance." But their voices were drowned by the thunder of fleets preparing for launch. Admiral Vale spent her nights in the strategy chamber aboard the TDS Vanguard. Holomaps of the galaxy glowed before her eyes. Dominion supply lines, fortress worlds, fleet positions. Every star on that map represented a target. Focus on their outer colonies first, she ordered her staff. We strike fast without warning. Make them understand what fear feels like. Commander Holt looked uneasy. Admiral, are we sure we're ready for this? Vale turned slowly. We'll never be ready for genocide. But we are ready for justice. As the first wave of ships began to assemble near Jupiter orbit, alien ambassadors from neutral species arrived on Earth, begging for restraint. They warned that retaliation would ignite chaos across the galaxy. President Ross met them in private. We offered peace, he said quietly. They answered with extinction. You ask us to stay silent, but silence is how genocide begins. The aliens left in silence, realizing that Earth's heart was no longer negotiable. By the end of the month, Earth's skies were filled with light. Thousands of vessels, old and new, rose from oceans, deserts, and orbiting yards. The people watched in awe as engines flared white and gold across the horizon. Children saluted from rooftops. Veterans wept quietly. And in that moment, the stars no longer looked cold. They looked like home waiting to be reclaimed. Admiral Vale stood on the command bridge of the Vanguard. Signal the fleet, she said. We depart at dawn. A young officer hesitated. Destination, ma'am? Vale's gaze hardened. The Vorg Dominion. As the ships aligned for jump, she whispered under her breath, words that would later echo across the galaxy. Mercy is for the living. They made sure we have none left to give. And when the Terran Fleet vanished into the light of faster-than-light jump, the stars themselves seemed to shiver. Far away, in the Dominion's capital, alarms began to sound. Their watchtowers detected a faint distortion in space, a ripple too organized to be natural. One guard turned to another in confusion. What is that? The answer came in the form of a single incoming transmission from deep space. No words, only a symbol, the crest of Earth glowing white against the void. Humanity was coming, and this time, there would be no more mercy. In the weeks that followed, the Sol system transformed into a forge. The peaceful hum of colonies and cities was replaced by the thunder of engines and the fire of construction. Every orbital ring, every shipyard, every old station came alive again. Humanity's hands, once used to build, now shaped the tools of vengeance. From Earth's orbit, the sky looked like a storm of silver. Ship after ship launched upward, trails of flame painting the clouds. Massive freighters were gutted and reforged into carriers. Old mining haulers were reborn as dreadnoughts. Artificial moons glowed bright with production lights that never went dark. Admiral Elara Vale stood on the command balcony of the TDS Vanguard, watching hundreds of vessels form their lines in the distance. Her voice carried through the comm network. "This is not a crusade," she said. "This is a reckoning. We strike not for conquest, but for every voice they silenced." Her words echoed across thousands of channels, soldiers, engineers, and pilots listening in silence. Every person knew someone who had lived on Kepler 9. Every person had a reason to fight. In the vast assembly fields below, mechs stood in endless rows. Their armor shone white and gold under the sunlight, a reminder that even in war humanity sought to bring light, not darkness. Drones swarmed between them, painting insignias and sealing plates. Technicians moved like ants, shouting coordinates, synchronizing launch sequences. On Mars, the great ship Sol Invictus rolled out of the dust domes, a vessel so large it cast a shadow over an entire canyon. The crowd below cheered as its engines ignited. For generations, it had been a museum piece, a relic of the first expansion era. Now it would lead the second. News spread fast through the galaxy. The same species that once mocked Earth for being young and naive, now watched in disbelief. Alien ambassadors sent desperate messages, begging humanity to stand down. But there was no answer. Every signal sent toward Earth disappeared into silence. Meanwhile, within the Vorg Dominion, fear began to spread like a virus. Reports came in from their border outposts. Human scouts appearing at the edges of space, probing routes, vanishing before anyone could catch them. Dominion officials dismissed the claims at first. "The humans lack numbers," said Grand Regent Thal Rin. "Their technology is primitive. They will make noise and we will silence them again." But deep down they remembered history. They remembered that humanity had survived everything: extinction events, world wars, even their own chaos. When humans were cornered, they didn't fall. They adapted. On the Vanguard, Vale watched as supply fleets aligned near Jupiter. Commander Holt approached her with new data. "Logistics report complete, ma'am. We now have 250 capital ships ready and 500 escorts. The smaller fleets are mobilizing from Luna and Europa. Civilian factories have converted entirely to defense production." "Civilian?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. He nodded. "Yes, ma'am. Even the families that lost everything on Kepler 9. They're building drones, armor, anything we need. Nobody had to ask them." Vale turned back to the window. "That's the difference between us and them," she said. "We don't need orders to fight for what's right." Down in the training barracks, new recruits lined up for their neural link calibrations. They were young, many barely old enough to remember peace, but their faces were set in the same quiet determination. In one corner, a small memorial wall displayed holograms of Kepler 9's lost citizens. Every soldier touched it before stepping onto the transport shuttles. Across the Sol system, a single phrase began to appear on walls, ships, and helmets. 3 words that united them all: no more mercy. The Dominion's propaganda channels mocked the phrase. They broadcast hollow laughter, claiming the humans were emotional, irrational, doomed to fail. Yet when their intelligence fleets intercepted early recordings of Earth's new warships, sleek, angular, and powered by dark matter fusion, the laughter stopped. Their analysts couldn't explain it. Humanity's technology had advanced too fast. The ship cores pulsed with an unknown energy signature, silent, cold, efficient. Some whispered that humans had unlocked old forbidden sciences from the pre-collapse archives. Others believed they had made a pact with something far beyond the known. Inside her quarters, Admiral Vale recorded a message for every officer in the fleet. Her words were simple. "We are not monsters," she said. "We do not seek their extinction. But if the Dominion wishes for war, We will remind them what it means to face humanity united. When the message ended, she sat alone for a moment, the weight of command pressed on her chest. She had seen what vengeance could do, how it consumed even the noble. Yet she also knew this wasn't just revenge. It was survival. The fleet's departure date was set. As dawn broke over Earth, the final checks began. Families gathered near launch zones, waving at the ships rising into the golden light. Children pointed upward, shouting names of heroes they didn't know yet. It was a moment of unity that the world hadn't felt in centuries. Commander Holt entered the bridge. "Fleet ready, Admiral." Vale straightened her uniform and nodded. "Then we march." A deep hum filled the Vanguard as its engines powered up. One by one, thousands of ships followed. The stars outside grew brighter, forming a spiral of light that stretched across the darkness. The Terran Fleet moved as one, a wall of steel and fire cutting through space. From the far side of the system, a camera satellite captured the moment and broadcasted it live. The image spread across every human screen, a vision of endless ships leaving Earth's orbit, shining like a second sunrise. The galaxy watched in silence. Some alien worlds prayed. Others locked their borders. A few even sent quiet messages of support, whispering what many feared to say aloud, that perhaps humanity's wrath was not only justified, but necessary. As the last ship vanished into the void, Vale spoke one final order: activate Operation Retribution. The stars rippled, and the fleet disappeared into faster-than-light corridors, leaving only echoes behind, somewhere beyond. The Dominion's outer worlds would soon see a sight they had forgotten existed, the sight of human warships in their skies. And with them came the voice of a species that had once begged for peace, now speaking only one truth. Mercy was our gift. You chose to burn it. The Vorg Dominion's outer rim worlds had never seen the stars move like that. At first, the sky shimmered with faint distortions, small flashes like lightning trapped in the vacuum. Then from the silence between those lights they came. The Terran Fleet arrived without warning. Thousands of ships fell out of faster-than-light tunnels in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming white and gold against the blackness of space. They didn't announce themselves, didn't send demands, didn't open communication. They simply appeared, silent, cold, unstoppable. On the Dominion world of Varus III, the planetary defense station scrambled to react. Alarms screamed across cities as alien commanders shouted over each other. "Identify them!" "Whose fleet is that?" The answer came seconds later when scanners locked onto the flagships. The human crest on a silver Earth encircled by fire flashed across their tactical screens. "Humans," someone whispered. They wouldn't, but the sky answered before the words could finish. The first kinetic strike hit the upper atmosphere at 10 times the speed of sound. A ball of white light ripped through the clouds, flattening everything beneath it. Towers melted like wax. Oceans boiled in seconds. In orbit, the TDS Vanguard stood at the center of the formation, its rail batteries glowing red from continuous fire. Admiral Elara Vale watched the storm from the bridge window, her expression unreadable. "Target the command hubs," she ordered. "No civilian zones unless confirmed military occupation." Her officers obeyed, but all of them knew the truth. On Varus III, everything was a command hub. The Dominion had built its empire on slavery and fear. There were no innocent centers left to spare. Below, the once proud cities of the Dominion blazed like torches. The light reached orbit, flickering across the faces of the human crews. Some looked away. Others stared, silent and pale. Commander Holt's voice broke the quiet. "First objective achieved, Admiral. The planet's communications grid is gone. Dominion fleets are mobilizing from the core worlds." Vale turned to him. "Good," she said softly. "Let them come." Across the galaxy, live feeds leaked through neutral networks. Billions watched from their homeworlds as the unimaginable unfolded. The humans who once begged for peace, now bringing fire to the stars. The Dominion tried to jam the transmissions, but the footage spread too fast. The image of the burning sky became a symbol, half of fear, half of awe. On the Dominion capital world, Regent Thal Rin stood in his war chamber, surrounded by frightened generals. "How?" he demanded. "How did they build such fleets so fast?" No one answered. A nervous officer spoke finally. "They used old technology, my lord. Hybrid drives, weapons forbidden by the Charter. Thal Rin sneered. So the humans throw away civilization to play gods. We will crush them with numbers. But even as he spoke, new reports arrived. Dominion fleets destroyed at the border. Outposts wiped out before sending distress signals. Humanity wasn't fighting like other species. They didn't occupy. They erased the tools of war, then vanished again into the void. Back on the Vanguard, Vale paced the deck. The weight of what she'd unleashed pressed on her like gravity. Report casualties, she ordered. Minimal on our side, Holt said. Their return fire barely touched our shields. And the planet? Holt hesitated. 73% uninhabitable, ma'am. Radiation spikes across major cities. The rest... He trailed off. Vale closed her eyes briefly. Mark it. Operation Retribution, Stage 1, complete. When the fleet regrouped, hundreds of Dominion ships arrived from hyperspace, forming a massive wall between humanity and the next system. Their admiral, a seasoned warlord named Corton, opened a transmission. His reptilian face appeared on the human bridge, eyes blazing with fury. Humans, he hissed. You speak of justice, but you bring genocide. You are no better than us. Vale stared at him in silence for a long moment. Then she answered, her voice calm and sharp. You burned children alive and called it order. Don't pretend to understand justice. She ended the call. Moments later, the battle began. It wasn't a fight. It was a storm. The Terran Fleet moved like one living creature. Every ship linked by neural network and AI synchronization. Beams of light carved through the darkness, slicing Dominion ships in half before their shields even registered impact. Explosions painted the void gold and white. Commander Holt gripped the railing. We're through their formation, Admiral. Their flagship is breaking apart, Vale nodded. Pull the fleet back 10,000 kilometers. Fire the Polaris Lance, a deep vibration filled the Vanguard. The ship's main cannon charged, pulling power from every reactor. The energy core hummed, glowing brighter than the sun. Then the beam fired, a single lance of pure light that stretched across space, piercing the Dominion command vessel from bow to stern. The explosion looked like a star being born. When the light faded, nothing remained. The battle lasted only 40 minutes. When it was over, silence returned to space. The Dominion's first defense line was gone. The path to their homeworld lay open. Vale stood alone on the bridge as the reports came in. Enemy forces neutralized. No survivors detected. She looked out into the void, the ashes drifting where once there had been fleets, pride, arrogance. Her voice was barely above a whisper. 3 billion of ours, now 3 million of theirs. The scales begin to balance. For the first time in history, the galaxy realized what humanity's anger truly meant. The species that had built cities in deserts and gardens on frozen moons had now turned their brilliance to destruction. They were not fighting for power. They were fighting for memory, for justice carved in fire. As the Vanguard turned toward the next system, Vale gave her final order of the day. Transmit one message to all Dominion frequencies. A comm officer typed the command. What message, Admiral? Vale's eyes stayed on the burning horizon. Tell them, Earth remembers. The message spread faster than light. Every Dominion world heard it. 3 words, calm and quiet, echoing across the stars. And on every alien world that once mocked humanity, every citizen looked up at the night sky with a new understanding. The humans had stopped playing civilized. And the day the sky burned was only the beginning. Silence returned to the stars, but it wasn't peaceful. The war had ended its first phase. The Dominion's outer defenses were gone, its pride shattered, its fleets in retreat. Yet even as human banners glowed across conquered space, something heavy hung in the void. An unease that no victory could erase. Aboard the TDS Vanguard, Admiral Elara Vale stood before the observation glass. Below her, the wreckage of a Dominion capital ship drifted like a ghost, broken apart but still glowing faintly. She watched as human recovery drones moved through the debris, collecting fragments and bodies for evidence. The faint light from distant suns shimmered on her face. Commander Holt entered quietly. All enemy transmissions have stopped, he said. Their high command is silent. It's over for now. Vale didn't answer. Her reflection looked pale, almost distant. Is it? She murmured. Or did we just become what they feared? Holt hesitated. Ma'am, we did what we had to.
Kepler 9, I know, she interrupted.
I keep repeating it to myself, we had to. But the screams don't fade, Commander. They just switch sides. He said nothing. There was nothing to say. Outside, the stars glittered like cold eyes watching the human fleet. Reports flooded in from across occupied systems. Dominion governors surrendering, soldiers throwing down weapons, civilians emerging from underground shelters. For the first time, the galaxy saw the humans not as newcomers but as a storm that had rewritten every rule of power. Messages began arriving through the open channels. Survivors from Kepler 9, colonists who had escaped before the attack, spoke to the fleet. Their words were filled with gratitude and sorrow. "Thank you," one woman said through tears. "You gave them what they gave us." Her transmission cut off before Vale could respond. Moments later, another message arrived, from a captured Dominion outpost. A human soldier's voice came through, trembling. "Admiral, they surrendered, ma'am. But our men, some of them, didn't stop firing." Vale froze. "Repeat that." "They were unarmed," the soldier whispered. "We told them to kneel. But the squad leader said no mercy and—" The line went silent. Holt's face tightened. "It's just chaos, Admiral. After what they did to us, some of the troops can't control it." Vale's jaw clenched. "Find that squad leader. Bring him in." For hours she sat alone in her quarters watching recordings of the war. Every blast, every explosion, every scream. Somewhere between justice and vengeance, the line had blurred until she could no longer see it. A knock echoed at her door. The voice on the other side was young, nervous. "Admiral? We've received a communication. From the Dominion Regent." Vale turned slowly. "Patch it through." The holoprojector flickered to life, showing the scarred face of Grand Regent Thalrin. His pride was gone. His voice cracked. "Human," he rasped. "You've destroyed our fleets, burned our cities, left billions starving. Is this your justice?" Vale stared at him, expression unreadable. "This is consequence," Thalrin laughed bitterly. "You call us monsters. But now you understand us. We both kill to protect what we love." "Don't compare us," she said. "You've already joined us," he replied softly. "Look at your own soldiers. Look at what they've done." The transmission ended, leaving only static. Vale stood there for a long time, feeling the weight of those words. Somewhere deep inside, she knew the alien wasn't entirely wrong. Humanity had carried the fire of vengeance too far. That night, she walked through the medical deck. Wounded soldiers lay in silence, eyes hollow. One young Marine looked up as she passed. "We did it, ma'am," he said weakly. "We made them pay." She stopped beside his bed. "Was it worth it?" she asked quietly. He blinked, unsure how to answer. Then tears rolled down his face. "I don't know." The corridor lights dimmed to night cycle. Vale returned to the bridge, unable to sleep. Outside, the ruins of another Dominion world rotated slowly beneath them, a dead planet glowing faintly red. She tapped her comm. "Fleet Command, this is Admiral Vale. Cease all orbital strikes until further notice. Begin relief operations where possible." There was hesitation on the other end. "Admiral, that's not protocol." "It is now," she said, her tone final. Hours later, supply ships descended onto the damaged surface, bringing food and medicine. Human soldiers, still wearing their battle armor, carried water to alien survivors. For the first time since the war began, the screams in the void turned into whispers of disbelief. Commander Holt approached her again. "Humanitarian aid for our enemies? The Council might not approve." "I'm not doing this for approval," Vale replied. "I'm doing it so we remember who we are." The following day, she gathered her officers in the command hall. "We won this war," she said, "but victory means nothing if we lose our humanity." "The Dominion killed our people," we answered. "But now we must stop before the galaxy learns to fear us more than them." Her officers nodded slowly, understanding that their admiral was fighting a new battle, this time against the darkness inside their own ranks. Later, she recorded one last message to the Terran Council. "Operation Retribution has achieved its objectives. The Dominion is broken, but the cost is beyond numbers. We must choose now what kind of species we become next, conquerors or guardians." She paused before ending the transmission, her voice soft but steady. "The galaxy will remember our wrath. Let it also remember our mercy." When the message ended, Vale stepped onto the deck one final time. The stars stretched endlessly before her, cold, distant, beautiful. For the first time in months, she felt something close to peace. Behind her, Holt said quietly, "What now, Admiral?" Vale smiled faintly. "Now we listen. The war has ended. But the void still has voices." Outside, the fleet hung in silence, bathed in the light of distant suns. And through that silence came faint signals, refugees, survivors, even Dominion civilians reaching out, asking for help instead of war. For the first time since Kepler 9 burned, humanity answered not with fire, but with words. The galaxy began to understand that humanity's strength was not only in vengeance, but in the courage to stop. The galaxy was quiet again, but it was not the same. The war had burned across 1,000 stars, and now only echoes remained. Where fleets once clashed, there was debris and silence. Where empires once stood proud, there were empty cities drifting through orbit. Humanity had won, but the stars no longer looked like victory. They looked like graves. Admiral Elara Vale stood on the observation deck of the TDS Vanguard, staring at the view beyond the glass. Below her rotated the Dominion's last capital world, once a planet of shimmering towers and endless arrogance. Now it glowed red from orbit strikes, its atmosphere torn open. Fires still burned across the surface like veins of molten light. Commander Holt stepped beside her quietly. "Ma'am, it's done. Their government has surrendered. The Regent is dead. The Dominion no longer exists." Vale didn't move. "And how many of us did it take?" Holt hesitated. 57 ships lost, 42,000 dead. For a moment, neither spoke. The numbers felt small compared to the scale of what they'd done, but heavy enough to sink a world. Finally, she whispered, "Prepare a transmission. All channels, civilian, military, alien. I want the entire galaxy to hear." Technicians hurried across the deck. Holoprojectors warmed up, satellites aligned, and signal relays pulsed with light. Every world connected to the Galactic network, human and alien alike, began receiving the broadcast. Across hundreds of planets, screens flickered to life. On distant colonies, miners and farmers stopped to look. In alien capitals, leaders froze in their thrones. The face of Admiral Vale appeared before them, calm, scarred, and resolute. "This is Admiral Elara Vale of the Terran Defense Fleet," she began. Her voice was steady, but the silence behind it carried the weight of the entire human race. 50 years ago, we joined your Galactic Council. We believed peace could last. We believed that reason and respect could bind worlds together, and when one of our colonies burned, we waited for justice." She paused, letting the words settle. "But justice never came. You called it politics. You called it balance. We called it what it was, cowardice." The image shifted. Behind her, through the wide glass, the scorched Dominion world turned slowly, glowing like a dying sun. "You watched as billions of our people were erased." Vale continued. "You said we should remain civilized. So we did. We buried our dead with honor. We spoke with patience. And you laughed, thinking humanity would always kneel." Her eyes hardened. "You were wrong. Around the galaxy, no one moved. Every translator struggled to keep up as her voice carried like thunder through the network. We struck back, not because we wanted war, but because silence became a weapon turned against us. We showed you the price of genocide. We showed you that mercy has limits." The image cut to the fleets. Thousands of Terran ships floating above alien skies, weapons dimmed, engines silent. "And now," Vale said, "the war is over. The Dominion is gone. We will not take their worlds. We will not enslave their people. We will rebuild what they destroyed, and then we will leave you to decide what kind of galaxy you want to live in." She leaned forward slightly, voice softer now, but no less powerful. "Understand this. Humanity does not seek conquest. But if you ever again look upon our worlds with hatred, if you ever again raise your hand against our kind, remember Kepler 9. Remember the day the sky burned. Remember the silence that followed." Her final words rang clear. "We are done playing civilized. We are done begging for peace. We are humanity, and we will never bow again." The transmission ended. For a few moments, the galaxy was frozen. No one spoke, no one moved. Then slowly on every planet, the message began to spread. Some called it a warning. Others called it the birth of a new age. On Earth, crowds filled the streets, watching the replay on giant holographic screens. The people were silent at first, then cheers rose, echoing through cities and oceans alike. The world that had once wept for its dead now stood taller than it ever had before. In alien halls, leaders whispered in fear. They could have taken everything, one said quietly. They chose not to. That makes them even more dangerous. Back on the Vanguard, Vale finally sat down in her chair. The hum of the ship was soft now, almost peaceful. Commander Holt looked at her. What happens next, Admiral? She smiled faintly, eyes still on the stars. We go home. The orders spread through the fleet. One by one, ships turned toward Sol. Engines flared gold and white, cutting through the void. As they moved, they passed over the shattered Dominion worlds. Some survivors looked up from the ruins and saw human medships descending, not with bombs, but with aid. The same hands that brought destruction now brought healing. In time, historians would call it the Great Turning, the moment when the galaxy realized humanity was not its destroyer, but its mirror, reflecting back the cruelty it had endured. When the fleet finally reached Earth, the planet glowed like a jewel beneath them. Oceans shimmered blue, cities sparkled with light, and the night side was alive with color. Vale stood on the bridge as the ship descended through the clouds. She could see people on rooftops waving, children pointing toward the sky. For the first time in months, she felt her chest loosen. We made it, Holt said quietly beside her. Vale nodded. We did, but we'll carry this war forever. Every one of us. The ship touched down on the Pacific platform amid cheers. Reporters shouted questions, soldiers embraced, and families wept with relief. But Vale stayed silent, looking toward the horizon. The sky above was golden, peaceful again. Later that night, she walked alone to the memorial being built in Geneva, a ring of white stone engraved with 3 words that would define humanity's place among the stars. No more mercy. She touched the cold surface, closed her eyes, and whispered, never again. High above, the stars glimmered quietly. Somewhere out there, the ruins of the Dominion drifted in darkness, and though fear remained, a strange calm had settled over the galaxy. The humans had shown their wrath and their restraint. The age of submission was over. The age of humanity had begun.